Okay, so in this video today we're going to be looking at the alleged bust-up between Matt Hancock and Boris Johnson. And so this is a video I've been wanting to do for a while, I just haven't done it for whatever reason. So sources, I'm always reluctant to believe said sources, so it's always about how believable a story is, and so how much you think the story has legs in it. So let's have a look at this. So sources have claimed that Matt Hancock is on borrowed time after a bust-up with the Prime Minister over the Department of Health's handling of the coronavirus emergency. So Matt Hancock told the Prime Minister to give me a break over in an alleged bust-up over the coronavirus, according to reports. The pair are understood to come blows after Boris Johnson grilled the Minister over the Department of Health's handling of the pandemic, the Mail on Sunday reports. So the Mail on Sunday has been pretty reliable on this stuff. So Matt Hancock is said to have responded to his boss, "That's not fair, give me a break." It has led to speculation over his future, Matt Hancock's future, and that he's on borrowed time, because I reckon he's the fall guy. I reckon they'll be like, look, Matt Hancock botched this, that's why so many people died, he was all in charge, I was in hospital for weeks, so I couldn't do anything, so it would make sense. He has fallen out with the most powerful figures, this is about Matt Hancock, in the government, from the Prime Minister down. Nothing will change immediately, but once we are beaten this thing, he can be expected, we can expect him to move on, the source has said. Always just slightly reluctant to use sources purely because if you're that confident, stick a name on it. However, another source has claimed Mr. Hancock has refuted the suggestions, saying that the Prime Minister has praised him doing an amazing job in hellishly difficult circumstances. We've been working incredibly hard with the PM and the whole Number 10 team, and have had nothing but total support from them. The UK now has the second highest recorded coronavirus death rate in Europe, and although the government warns against comparing figures between different countries, it faces probing questions about handling the pandemic. So there was at one point the government kept putting out spreadsheets and stuff comparing us to other countries, saying, look, we're doing so much better than these other countries. Now they're saying you can't compare us with other countries because there's difference in population density and all these things. So I'm like, why was it okay then when we were doing better than these countries? Why is it not okay now? I think the answer is obvious, but it's important to ask them these questions. That's something Keir Starmer did in PMQs, and I was laughing at it because it was great. In the latest failure linked to supply of personal protective equipment to the NHS frontline vital to protect healthcare workers from the contagious virus, more than 16 million of the Tiger Eye goggles had to be recalled from hospitals. The goggles, which were ordered as part of the pandemic stockpile in 2009, were found not to meet safety standards and regulations set out by the British Standards Institute. So what's happened is that they're using the stockpiles from 2009, which aren't up to standard anymore because standards have changed. That's pretty embarrassing, to be honest. The government's new 5-tier scheme, which they're not actually adhering to. And so, look, there's the stay alert thing, so that can only mean one thing. That's going to happen from this moment on. And so if we look here, the UK has one of the highest excess death rates among countries producing comparable data. So the FTs regarding the data as reliable, so we'll roll with them because the FT are quite reliable. So this is about excess death rates. This isn't about confirmed corona cases. This is about countries that can that have had deaths, but they haven't said the cause is coronavirus directly. And so look, we can see the UK is extremely high per million as well. So this is comparable in terms of population. So we can see here the UK is very high next to Spain. Italy lagging behind, with Belgium down in 4th, and Netherlands taking the Europa League 5th spot, and Peru up here as well, South American nation. And so here we can look at total excess deaths. So this is about this is an unfair statistic to use purely because it's unfair to countries that have larger populations. So the US takes the top spot, of course, because they've had huge deaths, huge numbers, and we know that the UK, the US, they hit is much higher than 60,000 now. This article from the 28th, so it's important to remember that this article is about over a week old, and obviously in a thing that's rolling, it's important to remember that. But at the same time, this gives us a good insight into how bad things are. And so we go to actual up-to-date data. This is excess UK deaths blamed on undiagnosed coronavirus cases. So this is this is an ONS statistic saying that the vast majority of excess deaths are related to coronavirus. So here we've got, following a detailed examination of death certificates, the ONS concluded that the majority of excess non-coronavirus deaths were due to undiagnosed cases. So they would look at the death certificate and the cause of death, and they would say, oh, look, it probably was undiagnosed case of coronavirus. And obviously there's no point giving a person that's died a testing, as the living need it far more than the dead. And so Nick Stripe, head of the life events of the ONS, said the balance of evidence so far points to undiagnosed COVID-19 in the elderly being the most likely explanation for the excess deaths that did not mention coronavirus on the certificates. And you can say, oh, that's dodgy, you know, that's a bit dodgy, and you know, they weren't diagnosed, so how do you know they died of it? They checked the death certificates, and the ONS are a non-governmental organisation. They're independent of the government, and that's why you'll always get the ONS occasionally telling off the Conservative government over lying about statistics. I think they've told off Labour maybe a few times, I'm not sure. But they were created by George Osborne, which is a real... it's been a real problem for them, because it's like, that's not true. They're like, you know, you're bending the numbers. And so the ONS have actually compiled far more accurate death statistics than the government. And so here we can see that the ONS are saying the vast majority of excess deaths are linked to COVID. So our COVID-19 death would our COVID deaths should actually be far higher, but you can also say the same would be applicable to other countries. So if we go to our final thing here, we just zoom out ever so slightly so I can explain what's going on here. So there's a reason why most people wouldn't use raw numbers, purely because the raw numbers are unfair to countries that have bigger populations. So if we look here, this is the number of cumulative deaths. So this is the total number of deaths, and we can see here the United States in first, UK we're second, and then you've got a couple rungs down, you've got Spain and Sweden. I've put in Sweden here because Sweden are still using the herd immunity strategy, and it will give us some insight into where the UK could be. Obviously the number would be far higher if the UK followed the same strategy, but it'll give us it was the best indication of what could happen, I suppose, on a smaller scale. Especially in a country that has citizens that are more responsible than citizens in the UK as well. So if we look at the per million statistics, which which kind of takes away how large your population is, makes it a bit more even. We can see that United Kingdom are in first, Spain are in second, Sweden third, and the US fourth if you take in per million statistics. The only issue is that the US statistics are not very reliable, purely because states have lied about testing, and states have also lied about deaths from coronavirus. I'm looking at you, Florida. And so this gives us a good insight into how these countries are doing. So the idea that Matt Hancock is allegedly to have said is, we're doing an amazing job. He's like, Matt, are you really doing an amazing job when you have potentially the highest death per million? Is that an amazing job, Matt? And in terms of total raw numbers, we have the second highest deaths. So if you look at per million, which is far more fair, you can see that we're still not doing very well. The only positive, and you can see like the curve is flattening when it comes to well, this is cumulative deaths, not fair. If we look at new deaths, we're looking is a lot more positive. So we can see that the UK, we had a slight peak June 3rd, and it's coming back down. Hopefully it stays down, and it goes down way more. But look, if you look here, in terms of new cases, Sweden tops the deaths. Sweden is the highest deaths per million, but we can see that in terms of like the new cases over the last week, Sweden have done very badly in terms of deaths per million, and we can see that the UK is dipping. Spain are doing very well, dipping fairly aggressively there, but so we can see that the deaths in the UK are falling down, but not as far down as other countries are. But if we look at cases, new cases per million, we can see that the UK is flattening out, so it's declining, but at the same time it looks like it's flattening out. So 29, 28.1, 30. So it's a very slow decline. We can see Spain having a slight uptick, unfortunately, but Spain's per million cases is far lower than ours, and so it's not a big deal as long as it doesn't rise too much more. But we can see that Sweden have ticked back up in cases, and Sweden's curve has been pretty consistent from the 10th of April up until now, but it's risen quite sharply, and the US have remained kind of even as well. But what we can see from this is that in terms of per million cases, the UK is not doing too well compared to other countries, and that had we followed Sweden's example, Jesus Christ, could you imagine how bad things would be right now? The fact that the public were like, what the hell are you guys doing? And then Boris Johnson's like, oh yeah, herd immunity, who's that, bro? We're going to do, we're going to lock down everything. And even if we bang in Italy, for example, Italy and Spain are countries we had, I think, about 2 weeks on. And you can see Italy are falling down quite rapidly when it comes to new cases. And if we look at new deaths, just give it a minute. New deaths, Italy are dipping hard. Italy doing really well. And so we can see that, that Italy and Spain are doing a lot better than we are now. Obviously, they are 2 weeks ahead of us, but at the same time, I'm hoping we have numbers close to theirs, in all honesty, but it's not looking very likely because we've lifted the lockdown far more early than they have. So I'm not sure how it's going to look. And obviously, I don't know how aggressive our testing is compared to theirs, because the government's like not telling us about the testing here. People tested unavailable number of tests. So you know, the UK is saying we have 200,000 capacity. The number of tests available is 127,000. It was nowhere near. It was nowhere near the 200,000 they said they had. And then look, we've got here, so we can see how many people have it, but we don't know how many people are tested. So we don't know how bad the infection rate is amongst people. Because if you test 3,000 people, obviously that's not the number, and you have 2,000 people test positive, that's horrendous. But if you do like, I don't know, 10, 15, 100,000 tests, only 2,000 people test positive, that's not too bad. But overall, we can see in this video that if it's the case that Boris Johnson said Matt Hancock has done an amazing job. Boris Johnson's a bigger idiot than any of us could have anticipated. Boris Johnson's an absolute monster, so stupid. And like, what I'll do is Georgia might be coming back on the show and doing a podcast with me next week, and so I'll get her to help us understand these numbers as well. I think that'd be an interesting one to talk about. And so yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. But we can see from this is the UK has nothing from our coronavirus response, has nothing to be proud about, in all honesty. This idea that we're a great country and we'll get through it is just, it's been laughed out and it's been shown to be ridiculous. Total deaths per million, look at that, we're second, close to Spain. And if we look at the way Spain are going now in terms of new cases, Spain are way lower than us. So I think that when this thing ends, say in about 2-3 months time, the UK could potentially have the highest death per million, and that's a scary thought. That's a very scary thought. And so I'm going to leave it there. And let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Data analysis isn't my best thing, so if I've made any mistakes, let me know in the comments below, and like, comment, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.